We are joined this week for our refill episode by friend of the show, Cat Hammons, who was gracious enough to talk to us about screenwriting. We want to thank Cat in advance for her insight into script writing.
Hi, this is Cat Hammons. I'm here to talk about the first 10 inches of your screenplay. And that's right, not the first 10 pages, the first 10 inches. Because in the world of screenwriting, you have about 30 seconds before a reader decides if they're going to finish their coffee or finish your script. The opening scene isn't just an introduction, it's a contract. Now, of course, the difference between a novel and a screenplay is, in a book, you can start with the vibe. You can spend 3 pages describing the way the mist clings to the moor or the internal monologue of a protagonist wondering if they left the stove on. The reader's there for the long haul. They'll give you a chapter or 2 to get things moving. The reality of a screenplay is we don't have internal monologues unless we're using voiceover, and proceed with caution if you're doing that. What we have is action and we have image. In a novel, you can tell us how a character feels. In a screenplay, you show us the character smashing a vase because they're too angry to speak. The opening of a script is a sprint, whereas a novel can afford to be a stroll. Now, there are 3 jobs that an opening scene should do. First thing is they need to establish the tone. If your movie, say, is a dark comedy, I should be laughing and a little uncomfortable by page 2. If it's a thriller, I need to feel the stakes and the rules of your world immediately. The second thing that an opening scene needs to do is it needs to establish the normal world. Show us what your protagonist's life looked like before the inciting incident blows everything up. But, and this is really important, make that normal world interesting. Number 3, the visual hook. Give us an image we can't look away from. So let's think of Jaws, for example. We don't start that movie with a lecture on beach safety. What we start that movie with is a girl swimming in the dark and an invisible monster pulling her under. Now that's a visual promise of what's to come. One of the big differences, I guess, between a screenplay and a novel is, to a certain degree, you could say a novel is an investigation and or an exploration. An investigation of a life, an exploration of a feeling, of characters, of relationships. The way I think of a screenplay, by contrast, is as a 120-page description of a visual image. A 120-page description that is going to be interpreted by dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands, I'm talking to you, Marvel movies, of creators and artists who all want to bring this image that is being described by the screenplay to life. So I wanted to give you a direct example. The example I picked is from the book American Prometheus, The Triumph and Tragedy of J. Robert Oppenheimer, written by Kai Bird and Martin J. Sherwin, versus the screenplay Oppenheimer by Christopher Nolan. Here are a few sentences from the opening of the book, from the preface. Robert Oppenheimer's life, his career, his reputation, even his sense of self-worth, suddenly spun out of control 4 days before Christmas in 1953. "I can't believe what is happening to me," he exclaimed, staring through the window of the car speeding him to his lawyer's Georgetown home in Washington, D.C. There, within a few hours, he had to confront a fateful decision. Should he resign from his government advisory positions, or should he fight the charges contained in the letter that Lewis Strauss, chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission, AEC, had handed to him out of the blue earlier that afternoon? The letter informed him that a new review of his background and policy recommendations had resulted in his being declared a security risk. Now, let's hear the opening of Christopher Nolan's screenplay, Oppenheimer. A vast sphere of fire, the fire of 1,000 suns, slowly eats the nighttime desert. A line of black type appears. Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to man, and the sound of dozens of feet stamping rhythmically. Another line of black type. For this, he was chained to a rock and tortured for eternity. Roiling plasma expands, the sound of stamping feet grows oppressive, the stamping faster and faster over a face. Gaunt, tense, eyes tightly shut. The face shudders, the sound ceases, as my eyes open, staring into the camera. Peer into my soul. J. Robert Oppenheimer, age 50, close-cropped graying hair. The gentle sounds of bureaucracy. Supertitle 1. Fission. Voice, offstage. Dr. Oppenheimer, as we begin, I believe you have a statement to read into the record. I glanced down at my notes. Oppenheimer. Yes, Your Honor. Second voice, offstage. We're not judges, Doctor. Oppenheimer. No, of course. Now, Christopher Nolan is doing a couple of things here. He's writing a screenplay from the first person, which in and of itself is fascinating, and definitely a conversation for another time. But we are starting at the same approximate place. A man who is bewildered by where he finds himself at this point in his life, and yet one is a car racing through Washington, D.C., and the other is in an almost mystical, spiritual place that is then contrasted with the mundanity of bureaucracy. Brilliant image. We'll see you next week. Start writing.